remember very clearly the moment my life changed forever. That day, I had just turned 16. A milestone that should have been filled with joy and celebration. But instead of birthday wishes and a small family gathering, I realized that the home I once considered my safe haven was starting to fall apart. My parents no longer spoke to each other the way they used to, and every family meal turned into a tense battleground. I tried to pretend that nothing was wrong, but deep down I knew everything was about to collapse. My name is Emily, and I grew up in a family that looked perfect from the outside. My father was a manager at a household products company founded by my grandmother in the 1986. She had been a strong, ambitious woman who started with a small laundromat and gradually expanded into manufacturing laundry detergents and cleaning supplies. When she retired, she wanted my mother to take over the company, but my mother refused. My grandmother was disappointed but didn't force her, so my father stepped in to run the business. My mother Lisa was once a warm and gentle woman. She stayed at home to take care of me and my younger brother Ethan, who was 7 years younger than me. When I was little, I thought she was the most wonderful person in the world. She always made delicious breakfasts, helped me pick out my clothes for school, and read bedtime stories to Ethan every night. But everything changed when my father took over the company. I don't know exactly when things started going wrong, but I remember the nights when my mother sat silently in the kitchen with a glass of wine, staring off into the distance. Whenever my father came home late from work, she no longer asked him if he was okay, she would just sigh and turn away. Gradually, the tension grew. At first, it was small complaints about how busy he was, but those complaints soon escalated into heated arguments. My mother started calling my father useless, saying that the company should have belonged to her, not him. "You're just running something I didn't even want," she once screamed, her voice full of contempt. My father never argued back. He simply endured it in silence. But I could see the pain in his eyes. I tried to shield Ethan from all of it. He was too young to understand what was happening, but I knew he could feel the tension in the house. I often took him outside to play or put on his favorite cartoons to distract him. I wanted to protect him, but I was just a 16-year-old girl who could do nothing but watch as my family crumbled. And then the fateful day arrived. That evening, I came home late after working on a group project. The moment I stepped into the house, I sensed that something was off. My father was standing in the living room with a suitcase by his side, his face filled with exhaustion and sorrow. "Dad?" I whispered, my heart racing. He turned to me, regret shining in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Emily." He walked over and pulled me into a tight hug. "I can't stay here anymore. It's not good for anyone." I felt like I had just been punched in the chest. "But what about me? What about Ethan?" I tried to stay calm, but my voice trembled. Dad placed a hand on my shoulder, his eyes filled with love. "I love you both so much. Never forget that." Ethan ran down the stairs, staring at Dad's suitcase. "Where are you going, Dad?" His voice was tiny, filled with confusion. Dad knelt down and pulled him into a hug. "Be good and listen to your sister, okay?" Ethan didn't understand what was happening, but when he saw my tears start to fall, he began to cry too. Dad stood up, kissed both of us on the forehead, then turned and walked toward the door. When it closed behind him, I felt like my whole world had just collapsed. About an hour later, Mom came home. I sat frozen on the couch, while Ethan had cried himself to sleep beside me. When I told her that Dad had left, she simply nodded, as if she had expected it. "Good," Mom said coldly, slipping off her shoes and heading into the kitchen like nothing had happened. I stared at her in shock. "How can you say that? Dad is gone. Don't you care?" Mom turned to look at me, her eyes icy. "You don't know anything, Emily. Your father cheated on me, over and over again." I froze. "Dad had an affair?" Mom smirked. "Yes, and I've had enough." I didn't know how to react. I wanted to believe her, but something deep inside me didn't feel right. I couldn't forget the look in Dad's eyes before he left. Full of regret and pain. I had no idea what was really going on, but I had a feeling things weren't as simple as Mom made them seem. And I never could have imagined that this was only the beginning of something even worse. 3 months after Dad left, I started to get used to his absence in the house, but I could never get used to Mom's coldness. Everything in our family felt empty. Silent dinners, weekends without laughter. Ethan would often ask when Dad was coming back, but I had no answer. Then one morning while we were having breakfast, Mom set her coffee cup down and casually said, "I have some good news. I'm getting married." I almost choked on my toast. I blinked, thinking I had misheard her. "What?" Mom smiled, acting as if it was the most normal thing in the world. "I met a wonderful man, his name is Paul, and I know he's the right one. You're going to like him." My stomach twisted. Just 3 months ago Dad was still here and now Mom was engaged to another man? I stared at her, waiting for a reasonable explanation. "But Mom, this is too fast. I don't understand." She shrugged, picking up her coffee cup like this was just another casual conversation. "Sometimes love happens unexpectedly, Emily. I'm not young anymore. I don't want to waste time." I glanced at Ethan, who was still trying to process what was happening. "Is he good to Ethan?" I asked, my voice tense. "Of course, Paul is great with both of you. He's excited to meet you." I didn't know what to say. A part of me wanted to scream that this was a mistake, that Mom was running away from the past instead of facing it, but I knew that no matter what I said she wouldn't listen. Paul entered our lives the very next week. He was tall, had neatly combed brown hair and wore a friendly smile, the kind of man people would look at and think, "Oh, he seems nice." But from the very first moment, I felt something was off. Paul always presented himself as the perfect man. He would bring candy for Ethan, play games with him and help him with his homework. But with me, it was like I didn't exist. At first I thought I was imagining things. But then I realized he was deliberately ignoring me. If I was in the room, he would only talk to Mom or Ethan. If I asked him a question, he would answer vaguely and then turn away. Mom, on the other hand, was completely enamored with him. She always smiled radiantly when he was around, as if no sadness had ever touched her. It made me feel more out of place than ever. After the wedding, Paul started going to the company with Mom. At first he just observed from the sidelines, but gradually Mom began giving him more responsibilities. They often discussed expansion plans, talking about new business strategies. Dad had once managed this company, but Mom never mentioned him anymore. Then one evening Mom called me into the living room, her face serious. "Emily, we need to talk." I sat down across from her and Paul, my stomach clenched. I didn't like the way they sat together, as if they were a team against me. "The company is doing really well, and Paul and I have decided to open a new branch in another city." I nodded, waiting for her to continue, but then Mom said something that left me speechless. "We're moving there." I blinked. "Moving? The whole family?" Mom looked at me as if she was about to say something completely reasonable, but I already knew it wouldn't be. "Paul and I have thought this through. The new house won't have enough space for everyone, and you're almost graduating. Transferring schools now wouldn't make sense. So, you're staying here?" I froze. "Staying? Alone?" "Not alone," Mom quickly said. "You'll be living with your grandmother." The feeling of being abandoned hit me like a punch to the chest. "So you're saying you, Paul, and Ethan are moving away and just leaving me here?" Mom sighed as if I was overreacting. "Emily, you're grown up now. Staying with Grandma is what's best for you." I clenched my fists, anger and pain swirling inside me. "But why? Why can't I go with you?" Mom shook her head. "Emily, you know the new place isn't big. Besides, you've never been interested in the family business. Staying here with Grandma will be better for you." I wanted to scream that I didn't care how big the house was, that I couldn't believe she was willing to leave me behind for a man who had just entered her life. But I said nothing. I just stood up, turned my back and walked to my room. As I closed the door, I heard Mom sigh, followed by Paul's low voice. "She'll be fine." I clenched my hands into fists, feeling like my whole world was crumbling beneath me. A few weeks later, they left. I stood outside Grandma's house, watching as the moving truck carried Mom, Paul, and Ethan away. Mom gave me a quick hug. Paul simply nodded, and Ethan's eyes were filled with tears. "Will you come visit me?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. I swallowed back my own tears and smiled at him. "Of course. Nothing can separate us." But as the car disappeared from sight, I knew one thing for sure. I no longer mattered to my mother. Living with Grandma wasn't as bad as I had thought. She was a tough woman, but full of love. She never forced me to do or become something I wasn't. Instead of trying to change me, she simply created a safe space where I could breathe, think, and most importantly, be myself. In the first few days, I was still in a daze. Mom had left, taking my little brother with her, abandoning me without a second thought. I couldn't understand how she could do that, and even more, I couldn't understand why I no longer mattered to her. But over time, I learned to accept the truth. Grandma never asked too many questions about Mom or Paul. She simply told me, "You can't change what others do to you, Emily. But you can decide how you face it." With her guidance, I focused on my studies, finished high school, and went to college. I chose to major in business administration, something that just a few years ago I would have laughed at if someone had suggested it. But now, I understood that I couldn't keep running away. I couldn't let Mom and Paul control everything that rightfully belonged to my family. When I turned 20, Grandma called me into her office. Just like when Mom had announced her remarriage, I knew she was about to say something important. But I wasn't prepared for what she was about to tell me. She slid a folder across the desk toward me. "Open it, Emily." I picked up the file, my hand slightly trembling. When I opened it and read the words on the first page, I froze. I was the legal owner of the company. I looked up at Grandma, waiting for an explanation. "This company has always belonged to our family, and I want it to be run by someone with the right heart," she said firmly. "Your mother and Paul are only managing a branch, but the most important part of this company, the headquarters, the brand, and its full value, now belongs to you." I gripped the file tightly, feeling like I was in a dream. "But why me?" Grandma smiled gently. "Because I see potential in you. And more importantly, I trust that you'll do the right thing. You won't put personal gain above everything else like your mother did." I didn't know what to say. I had once felt invisible in my own family, abandoned, unimportant. But now, I was the one holding the most important thing of all. But Grandma wasn't done yet. She placed her hand on mine and spoke slowly. "Now that you have control of the company, before you make any decisions, I think you should see your father." I froze. "Dad?" She nodded. "There are things you need to hear from him. Things your mother never told you." I didn't know how to respond to that. I hadn't seen Dad since the day he left, and for years I had lived with the belief that he was the betrayer, the one who had torn our family apart. But now, something in Grandma's voice made me feel like I didn't know the whole story. After a week of internal struggle, I finally decided to call him. We arranged to meet at a small cafe in the city. When I walked in, I saw him sitting in the corner, gripping a cup of coffee, his face marked with the weight of time. He looked older, more exhausted than I remembered, but when he looked up and saw me, his eyes were still as gentle as ever. There was a long silence before I finally spoke. "Dad, I need to hear the truth." He let out a deep sigh, as if he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. "What did your mother tell you about our marriage?" I hesitated. "She said you cheated on her, over and over again." Dad closed his eyes for a brief moment, then opened them, filled with pain. "Your mother didn't lie, but she didn't tell you the whole truth either." I said nothing, waiting for him to continue. He took a deep breath. "Your mother never respected me. From the moment I took over the company from your grandmother, she looked down on me. Every day, she reminded me that I wasn't good enough, that the company should have been hers. Nothing I did was ever enough." I swallowed hard. I remembered the times Mom had yelled at him in the kitchen, her eyes filled with contempt. Then one night, Dad paused, his voice hoarse. "We had a huge fight. I felt worthless. I made a mistake. I went out drinking and it happened." My chest tightened. "You only cheated once?" He nodded. "I don't excuse what I did. I was wrong and I regretted it immediately. But when your mother found out, she didn't give me a chance to make things right. She used it against me. She threatened to take everything, the company, the house, even you and Ethan. I tried to hold on, but she never gave me a chance." I sat there, my heart heavy. My whole life I had believed that my father was the bad one, the reason my family fell apart. But now, the truth was right in front of me. My mother was not the victim I had always thought she was. She was the one who had pushed my father away. And now, she was walking down the path she had chosen for herself. I thought that after learning the truth about my parents' marriage, I would have time to process everything, to figure out how to deal with it all. But I was wrong. The real storm was only just beginning. 3 weeks after my meeting with Dad, Mom showed up. I didn't know how she had found out, but one afternoon as I was leaving the company office I saw a familiar car parked outside Grandma's house. And standing at the front door wearing a confident expression was my mother, Lisa. She was dressed in an expensive dress, perfectly made up, showing no signs of being a woman whose daughter had cut off contact for over a year. I clenched my purse tightly in my hand, took a deep breath and walked toward her. Mom turned around, her lips curling into a fake smile. "Emily, I'm so happy to see you." I didn't respond right away. I just stood there, studying her, as if trying to determine whether this was really my mother. Behind the door, Grandma stood with her arms crossed, clearly already aware of why Mom was here. "Do you have time to talk?" Mom continued, her voice unusually gentle. I didn't trust this sudden kindness. "What do you want?" She blinked, as if surprised by my bluntness, but then she quickly composed herself. "I just want to talk to you. I heard you're running the company now. I'm so proud of you." I almost laughed. If she was truly proud of me, she wouldn't have abandoned me in the first place. "Proud enough to not contact me even once all these years?" I replied coldly. Mom sighed, trying to sound remorseful. "I know I made mistakes, but I want to fix things. I want you to come back to the family. Paul and I have thought a lot about this and we can run the company together. We're a family, Emily. You can't do this alone." Grandma stepped forward, her voice firm. "This company belongs to Emily, Lisa. It has nothing to do with you anymore." Mom glanced at Grandma, a flicker of irritation flashing in her eyes before it quickly disappeared. She turned back to me, her voice disturbingly gentle. "Emily, do you realize this company was supposed to be mine? If Grandma hadn't been biased, I would have been the one running it, not you. Paul and I have worked tirelessly to expand the new branch. If you don't help, the company could be at risk." I clenched my fists. Finally, she had revealed her true intentions. "You want control over the finances, don't you?" Mom kept her smile, but her eyes were cold as ice. "You don't understand, Emily. Business is complicated. Without support, you could ruin everything our family has built." Grandma cleared her throat, cutting in. "You and Paul are in financial trouble, aren't you?" Mom didn't respond right away, but her silence spoke volumes. Grandma turned to me, her expression firm. "I suspected this would happen, so I hired a private investigator." The air in the room grew thick with tension. I turned to look at her. "An investigator?" She nodded. "On Paul, and on what he's been doing with your mother." Mom shot up from her chair. "You had no right to do that." Grandma remained calm. "I had every right when I realized he was taking advantage of my daughter." She reached into a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. "You deserve to know the truth, Emily." I took the file, flipped it open, and what I saw nearly took my breath away. Paul wasn't the brilliant businessman my mother had praised. He was a professional con artist. He had targeted multiple wealthy women, manipulating them into giving him financial control before disappearing with their assets. The file contained evidence of a past fraud accusation in another state. The case had never gone to trial because the victim dropped the charges, but not before Paul had drained her accounts and vanished. But the most chilling discovery was the documentation of company funds that Paul and Mom had been quietly siphoning over the past few months. They had been attempting to transfer money out of the main accounts and funnel it into their branch. If we hadn't caught it in time, the company could have lost a massive amount. I lifted my head and looked at Mom. She had gone pale. "Is this why you came back?" I whispered, my chest tightening with pain. "You didn't come back for me. You came back for the money." Mom opened her mouth, but no words came out. Grandma crossed her arms, her voice sharp. "Now do you understand why I didn't give you the company, Lisa?" Mom clenched her fists, her eyes burning with resentment. But then, as if realizing she had no other choice, she stood up, her face cold and emotionless. "This isn't over," she whispered, her voice laced with threat. I looked at her, a wave of pity washing over me. "No, Mom, this is over, and you brought this on yourself." Without another word, she turned on her heels and stormed out of the house, never once looking back. I watched her disappear, my heart feeling heavy. I had lost my mother a long time ago. It was only now that I truly accepted it. After the tense confrontation with Mom, I knew things weren't truly over. Even though she had left in anger, I understood that she wouldn't give up easily. Not on her obsession with control and not on Ethan. A few days later, Grandma and I sat down with Dad to discuss Ethan. Looking at him, I realized something. Despite everything he had lost in the divorce, his love for his children had never wavered. Dad spoke slowly, carefully choosing his words. Paul is not someone who can be trusted, and Lisa, she put her greed above her own children. He paused, his eyes filled with concern. Ethan needs stability. I nodded immediately. I'll do whatever it takes to help you. Grandma agreed. We have solid evidence against Paul. The court won't let Lisa keep Ethan after seeing what she allowed him to do. And just as we expected, the custody battle was intense. Mom arrived at the courthouse looking as polished as ever, her hair styled to perfection, her outfit immaculate, her confidence unwavering. She played the role of the devoted mother, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. Dad's lawyer presented everything. Paul's criminal record, proving his history of fraud. The suspicious financial transactions from the company that Mom and Paul had orchestrated. Text messages and emails, showing that Mom had been fully aware of Paul's actions but had still given him control over assets. Mom tried to defend herself, tried to play the victim, but this time no one believed her. The moment the judge declared that full custody of Ethan would be granted to Dad, I felt a crushing weight lift from my chest. Mom didn't say anything right away, but I could see the flicker of fear in her eyes. For the first time, she was no longer in control. But the biggest shock was yet to come. A week after the trial, Mom called me. I almost didn't pick up, but part of me was curious to hear what she had to say. Her voice trembled. Emily, Paul is gone. I stiffened. What? She let out a bitter laugh, but I could hear the devastation behind it. He drained my accounts. He disappeared. For the first time in my life, I heard my mother break down, as if she had truly lost everything. I didn't feel satisfaction, I only felt empty. She had traded her family for a con man, and now, she had nothing left. After the trial, Ethan moved in with Dad. I would never forget the moment he ran into my arms after being apart for so many months. You won't leave me again, right? Ethan asked, his voice small and uncertain. I held him tightly, promising with all my heart, never. My life slowly started to stabilize. I continued my studies, attending classes during the day and spending my nights researching company matters. I barely had time to rest, but I didn't feel exhausted. I was building a future that I had chosen, not one dictated by my mother. Dad gradually became a steady presence in my life again. He was no longer the broken man he had once been. He spent time with Ethan, helped me learn the business, and most importantly, he became a real father to us again. Grandma remained by my side, guiding me every step of the way, but she slowly started giving me more authority in making decisions. One day, while I was working in her office, she placed a hand on my shoulder and smiled softly. You're doing great, Emily. I knew I chose the right person for this company. For the first time, I truly felt like I deserved the responsibility I had been given. But then Mom came back. She showed up at my doorstep one late afternoon looking pale and worn. The arrogance was gone, the expensive clothes were gone. She was just a woman who had lost everything. I stood there staring at her, my emotions tangled. Emily. Her voice was weak. I was wrong. I truly regret everything. Can we start over? I looked at her, remembering everything. How she abandoned me, used the company for her own gain, lied to me about Dad, and tried to reclaim control for money. My mother had never truly been a mother. She only came back because she had nowhere else to go. I took a deep breath. You had the chance to do the right thing, and you didn't. I shook my head. I can't start over with you. She opened her mouth to say something, but before she could, I shut the door. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pain anymore. There was only one simple truth. I didn't need her anymore. The following months were a whirlwind of work and studies. On weekends I visited Dad and Ethan, spending time with my little brother, listening to his excited stories about school. In the evenings I sat with Grandma, learning lessons from her that no textbook could ever teach. One day, as I stood by my office window, looking out at the bustling city below, a realization hit me. I had lost a mother, but I had gained a family that truly loved me. And I knew that nothing in the world could ever change that. Life doesn't always unfold the way we expect. Emily endured betrayal, loss, and heartbreak from the very people who were supposed to love her. But instead of letting it break her, she rose above it, found her own strength, and built a future she controlled. Emily's story isn't just about a broken family or manipulation. It's about self-discovery, learning to let go of the past and cherishing those who truly care. Sometimes losing someone doesn't mean losing everything, it's an opportunity to start again. What do you think about Emily's story? Do you think she made the right choice in rejecting her mother? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more inspiring stories about life, family, and lessons worth learning.